This video is going to cover the second part of what I'm calling part 2 of our infectious diseases. Digestive system, and this is actually pretty short, and then down here is the review, same as on the other section. So, in fact, I'll click on that again before this video is over. So, dividing up the digestive system. So here's a person eating something. You can do what's called the alimentary canal and the accessory organs, but tongue and teeth up here, of course, this is the oral cavity. The pharynx is the passageway, which we covered that with respiratory. It's an area for food, water, and air. And then down here in the front is where the trachea went down and branched down to the lungs. Well, this is called the esophagus. So here's the liver, stomach, small intestine. Up here is the colon, goes around that way. The sigmoid colon curves around the back. There's the rectum, there's the anus, and then the stomach, and then the small intestine. So, and we do talk about some things like ulcerations of the colon, causes bleeding, things like that. The colon is, I didn't mean to go so fast through that, it goes down like that. So the colon is the large intestine, this is the small intestine. All that pink here is the small intestine. So the duodenum, jejunum, ileum are those sections. And then this up here, the ascending, the transverse, the descending colon, and then the sigmoid, like I said, it kind of curves around the back, and the rectum, anus. That's the large intestine / colon. So our first contestant, of course, dental caries, cavities. And there's all forms of mouth issues. Yes, Streptococcus mutans. And look, there is a lactobacillus, there's a corynebacterium, there are all kinds of microbes that can cause tooth decay. What happens is the bacteria stick to the teeth, they ferment the sugar from diet, and they're able to break down the enamel. And that's why acidic plaque, some of that you have to get that actually scraped off at the dentist, but produced by interaction of the streptococcus. So softening of the enamel, tooth decay, pain, enamel breaks down. Cholera, Vibrio cholerae, which means that they are comma-shaped organisms like that. Cholera is bad stuff. It also can cause some issues, and this is the same thing that's in your handout. So fecal contamination of food, water, or hands, that's how it's transmitted. Raw or undercooked seafood. The natural disaster thing is when all the water starts running together with sewer water. That's what happened with some hurricanes here in the United States. The sewers got flooded, and so those areas that the houses were in, they had cholera basically. Rice water diarrhea. Now what that means is person loses so much. Well, first of all, the microbe, and there was a picture of it, it actually gets inside of the colon, or excuse me, the intestines, and what it ends up doing is it causes the body, and it's mainly the colon, the body tries to get rid of it, so it causes diarrhea, and a person can lose 3 to 5 gallons of water doing so. It's the body's way of trying to get rid of the microbe. And the rice water diarrhea, the diarrhea, this is gross, I'm sorry, but if you boil white rice and you take the rice out and the water that's left behind, it looks like that. And so, yeah, obviously losing that much water, a person can go into shock and die. So, bad things. Typhoid fever. This actually has a famous story with it. That is Salmonella typhimurium, which is right there. And I'm going to go back. I apologize for the small writing. Food, water contaminated with either feces or urine. And that's where Mary Mallon, yes, Typhoid Mary. Humans are the only reservoir, fecal oral contamination. What ends up happening, this is a bacteria infection. Some people can be carriers for this. It stays in the gallbladder. And basically, a person doesn't wash their hands after going to the restroom, then they can spread that. 2-week incubation period, followed by high fever, yeah, like 107 to 108. Headache, diarrhea, multiplies in phagocytic cells, meaning the normal cells will be eating it. It can multiply inside those. Can become systemic, stored in the gallbladder. Yeah, and then there's people who can get this and they don't die of it, and they're carriers for it. So Typhoid Mary here, I probably should have just bolded that for you guys, but Typhoid Mary is a famous study. If you ever need to do a report on somebody, she's a great person. Basically, she was a cook in New York, and if you read about her story, people have linked her to deaths of thousands of people, but they claim she caused a water outbreak of Salmonella typhimurium, this typhoid fever. But she worked as a cook, and everywhere she worked, she was getting people sick. And they finally threw her in jail. They had to release her because they didn't really have cause, but at some point she was put inside of an asylum and quarantined, and then she volunteered to be a cook while she was there. So I know it says at least 3 deaths, but there are people that claim she caused way more than that. I said thousands. There's a water outbreak of this that apparently killed 1,000 people in New York, and they thought maybe she was the reason for it. Yeah, and she would change her name, so that's why she's called Typhoid Mary. She was a carrier for typhoid fever, and she caused outbreaks everywhere she went. So botulism, Clostridium botulinum, you basically get that from food. This is also anything that's Clostridium. They're obligate anaerobes. They're killed by oxygen. But if you had some situation where food is in an area where there's no oxygen, then yeah, you can possibly get this. Produces a toxin that blocks the neurotransmitter receptors at muscle. Made that short. Yeah, this is an okay picture, but this is a muscle cell. Now, this is called a motor. This is the ending of a motor neuron. It's called the synaptic bulb. This is the synaptic cleft, and then this is the actual muscle itself that it's connecting to. And the way that nerves work is they don't actually connect physically to a muscle, gland, or organ. There is this little space here called the synaptic cleft. And those little dots there are neurotransmitters. There's all different kinds. This one's acetylcholine, which is at the myoneural or neuromuscular junction. And like it's showing here, that botulinum toxin, and this is showing it's actually blocking it from being released. I've seen also where it's blocking down here and preventing the neurotransmitter from binding to the little receptors in the bottom. But this is how a muscle or organ or gland gets stimulated, is that these neurotransmitters, they'll travel across that space and bind to receptors down here, and they will cause that area to be stimulated. So that botulism toxin blocks that. So obviously it causes paralysis. Person can't breathe even. It says weakened, blurred vision, blocks a neurotransmitter. Yeah, flaccid paralysis. So meaning paralysis, period. No movement. Okay, the hepatitis. Now they've discovered new ones. We're going to stay with these. There's a hepatitis A, which is kind of like a food poisoning. So fecal contamination of food, water, and hands, raw shellfish. Hepatitis affects liver function. Malaise, so general weak feeling, nausea, abdominal discomfort, yellow skin, and sclera of the eyes. Causes jaundice. That's a yellowing of the sclera. Can also cause the skin to look yellow as well. And there's a lot of, you can see here, this is hepatitis A. Hepatitis A and E are basically almost like food. This is a food poisoning. This goes away. Hepatitis A goes away. Hepatitis B, serum hepatitis, HBV, contaminated blood, needles, or body fluids. That's how this one's transmitted. Saliva, semen, breast milk. Malaise, diarrhea. Now, this one actually does cause liver damage. Hepatitis C is also possibly a sexually transmitted disease, contaminated blood or needles. A lot of people get hepatitis C from sharing needles while doing, like injecting drugs. They'll share needles. It is also considered a sexually transmitted disease. Same symptoms. This hepatitis C and B, and then also D, these stay. Hepatitis C is something that actually stays in a person's body. And, it causes liver damage. It can. Hepatitis D, which can also be a co-infection with HBV. And this is kind of an odd one. Basically, a person, to get hepatitis D, you have to have gotten hepatitis B. And like I said, co-infection, and this does the most damage to the liver if a person is positive for B and D. Same symptoms, abdominal discomfort. The abdominal discomfort comes from the fact that the liver is swollen. And yeah, it must be co-infected with hepatitis HBV. So in other words, to get hepatitis D, you must have hepatitis B first. And hepatitis E says fecal contamination, food, water, and hands. These all cause the same thing in that they cause trouble with the liver. And the yellowing of the skin is because the liver is there to process bilirubin, and it's not processing it because it's swollen up and it gets stored in skin. But B, C, and D are the more serious forms of hepatitis. Okay, and I did this in the other video. Guess I'll have to post it again. Man, it just completely kicked me out of the whole thing there. So I guess obviously I'll be posting that again. So, all right, well, let's go back. Here we go. There we are. So the review for this exam, and I'll show you just the beginning of the test as well. So here it is. It's over skin, genitourinary, respiratory diseases, and gastrointestinal. And I guess I'll take that section with the viruses out. But, all right. Well, anyway, that's what it's over. There's the review that's posted. It will look a little different when you get to it. And let's go, if it'll let me, back to the breadcrumbs. One more. Oh, okay. Hold on. Before I leave there, there is the last lesson here, lesson 9, and I'll change that to infectious disease. But this is the very last lesson of this course. There's 9 lessons total. Same as before, you click on that, just complete it, and you can do that as many times as you want to get 100. Exam 5. Okay, it is 43 questions. It's 7 matching sets, 4 to 5, and about 1 true false, 35 multiple choice. So it's over. It is over both sections in this unit. So Unit 8 and Unit 9. And there is, like it says there is an exam review posted under the tabs for this section. All right, and there's the link for it right there. Okay, so that is the last of the regular lecture exams. Exam 5 is the last of the regular lecture exams.